He just wanted to buy a charm bracelet for his little sister. But one slip, one racist accusation, and one phone call turned everything upside down. What no one expected. His mom wears the badge, and she came with more than just a uniform. Saturday afternoon in Brookdale cast a golden hue over the main street, soft and warm like an autumn wool blanket. Couples strolled hand in hand past boutique windows, children laughed and chased each other around the town fountain, and gentle music drifted from the corner cafe, blending with the hum of passing cars. Amid this peaceful setting, 17-year-old Malik Turner walked briskly down the sidewalk, eyes full of determination. In the pocket of his hoodie was a worn leather wallet, holding the cash he'd spent nearly half a year saving from his part-time job at Parker's Bakery. He had done it all, wiping tables, taking out the trash, carrying trays, never hesitating as long as, at the end of each shift, he could tuck a few bills into the small box hidden in his desk drawer. All of it for one reason: his little sister Amira's 12th birthday. Amira adored charm bracelets, especially the kind with tiny pendants that jingled softly with every movement of her wrist. Every time they passed the display window of Crescent Lux Jewelers, Malik saw her press her face to the glass, her eyes lighting up at the sight of sparkling treasures that looked like they belonged in a fairy tale. And Malik had made a silent promise. This year, she wouldn't just admire them. Crescent Lux Jewelers was the most luxurious jewelry store in Brookdale, a place where diamond rings sat atop black velvet cushions, and Italian silver necklaces glimmered under golden light. The clientele usually wore designer clothes, expensive watches, and perfume scented with cedarwood and vanilla. Malik knew he didn't belong in that world. But today, that didn't matter. He stopped outside the display window, straightened the collar of his polo beneath the hoodie, took a deep breath, and pushed the door open. The wind chime above gave a gentle ring, but to Malik, it felt like a war drum pounding in his chest. Inside, the air was cool from the ceiling-mounted air conditioning, and the scent of polished wood and high-end perfume mixed into an indescribably elegant fragrance. Curved glass counters snaked across the store like a symphony of light, reflecting the vibrant gleam of gemstones. Malik stepped closer to one display, his eyes lighting up at the sight of the perfect bracelet Amira would love. Delicate silver links, with 3 tiny charms, a star, a heart, and a butterfly. "There it is," he whispered. His face softened, eyes relaxing. For a moment, Malik wasn't a kid carrying the weight of judgment. He was just a big brother trying to bring joy to the sister he loved most in the world. He looked up, gaze directed toward the woman behind the counter, ready to ask about the bracelet. But before he could speak, he noticed her expression had changed. And from that moment on, Malik's beautiful, ordinary day began to veer into a direction he never could have imagined. He hadn't even taken 3 more steps when a cold voice cut through the air from behind the glass counter. "What do you need in here?" the woman asked. Her tone was even, but heavy with scrutiny. He looked up. Behind the glass counter stood a woman in her late 50s with meticulously curled blonde hair, a flawless layer of makeup, and a gold watch that glinted under the showroom lights. Her name tag read, Susan Halbridge. Malik offered a polite smile. "I was hoping to take a look at that silver charm bracelet in the corner. My little sister's birthday is coming up." He stepped closer and pointed to the delicate bracelet under the warm glow of the display lights, silver links with heart-shaped charms arranged in neat symmetry. But Susan didn't follow his hand. Her eyes swept over him instead, from his simple gray hoodie and neat navy polo shirt to his dark jeans and spotless sneakers. His clothes were clean, carefully chosen, respectable. But to Susan, he didn't need to be disheveled. He just needed to be black and not wearing a suit. "That one?" she asked, her lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. "It's almost $700, you know." Malik nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I know." Susan raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" She dragged out the last word like it was some sort of joke she was trying not to laugh at. Malik inhaled slowly, keeping his voice steady. "I've been saving since January. I work 3 shifts a week at Parker's Coffee." He pulled out his wallet and opened it slightly, revealing a neatly folded stack of bills, tips, paychecks, even a few wrinkled tens he'd pressed flat and stacked with care. Susan stared at the money like it was a crime scene under investigation. "Cash," she repeated, tone sharpened. "Not many people carry that kind of money. Unless..." She paused. Her eyes narrowed. Unless it came from somewhere questionable. Heat flared in Malik's chest. I work hard, he said evenly. I've been saving for this gift for half a year. Susan gave a tight nod, still watching the money like it might grow legs and run. Sure. Maybe. Still, we've seen all kinds in here. Shoplifters. Counterfeiters. People you can't always trust. You understand, right? No, he didn't. He straightened his back, meeting her gaze. I just want to buy a birthday gift for my sister. Like anyone else. Susan folded her arms. Well, then don't drop it or damage anything. We're not responsible. She unlocked the display and retrieved the bracelet, placing it atop a velvet pad. But instead of letting him pick it up, she held it in both hands, carefully, like it might explode, keeping her distance as though she were handing off something dangerous. Malik sighed, his eyes stinging. A gift of love for his little sister was now beginning with an unnamed humiliation. He gently picked up the silver bracelet again, the overhead lights casting shimmering reflections on the polished metal. Malik smiled, imagining the radiant look on Amira's face when she received it. But as he turned the bracelet slightly to inspect it more closely, his hand, trembling with nerves, slipped, and the bracelet dropped onto the glass counter with a soft clink, then rolled off and hit the floor. In that moment, the air in the store seemed to freeze. Susan Halbridge, her eyes sharp as blades, instantly screamed. Oh my God! I knew it! You were trying to steal it, weren't you? Her voice echoed throughout the store, drawing every pair of eyes toward Malik. He stammered. And no, it's not like that, I just... But Susan didn't let him speak. She swiftly picked up the phone, dialing the police and speaking loudly. Police? I need immediate assistance at Crescent Lux Jewelers in Brookdale. A black teenager in a hoodie just attempted to steal merchandise. He became aggressive when confronted. Malik stood frozen, unable to believe what was happening. He looked around and saw customers stepping back, eyes filled with suspicion and fear. One woman clutched her purse tightly to her chest. A man whispered something to his companion, his gaze laced with prejudice. Malik bent down and picked up the bracelet, his hand trembling. He looked at Susan and said, I didn't mean to. I just wanted to buy it for my sister. I have the money. He opened his wallet, pulling out the cash he had saved for months. But Susan gave it only a passing glance before saying, with a sneer, Where did that money come from? You steal it? Or sell drugs, maybe? Malik felt the blood rush to his face, his heart pounding. He wanted to scream, to defend himself, but he knew that any reaction could be misinterpreted. He took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. The sound of police sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder by the second. Malik knew he was about to face something far more serious than just buying a gift. He stood still, the bracelet still in his hand, and stared straight at Susan, refusing to let injustice bend his spine. The wailing sirens pierced the tense atmosphere of Crescent Lux Jewelers. The glass door swung open with such force that the bells hanging above clanged wildly. Two officers stepped inside, one tall, with salt and pepper hair and a face as cold as stone. His uniform was buttoned to the collar, his badge gleaming, Sergeant Cole Harris. The other was younger, his eyes flickering as he scanned the room, Officer Ethan Wells. Sergeant Harris walked straight toward Malik without asking a single question or looking around. You, hands on your head, face the wall. Malik froze. I didn't do anything wrong. No arguments, Harris barked, pulling out his handcuffs with the speed and familiarity of someone who did this daily. Ethan Wells held back, his eyes flicking to Susan Halbridge, who stood behind the counter clutching her chest like she'd just survived an armed robbery. What's the situation here, Ms. Halbridge? He asked. That boy. He tried to steal a silver bracelet. I stopped him just in time. Black kid, wearing a hoodie, exactly the type always causing trouble. Malik clenched his fists. I just wanted to buy a birthday gift for my little sister. I have the cash. The bracelet slipped while I was holding it. Sergeant Harris didn't listen, or chose not to. The air inside Crescent Lux Jewelers had thickened, as though each molecule waited to explode. Malik Turner stood motionless, fists clenched, yet he hadn't made a single move of resistance. In front of him, Sergeant Cole Harris, with his broad frame and rigid face, advanced with cuffs already opened in his hands. Officer Ethan Wells remained behind, hesitating, worry etched clearly on his face as he glanced between Malik and his partner. "Hands out now," Harris hissed through gritted teeth. "We don't need an argument here." Malik swallowed hard, but his voice remained eerily calm, as if some deeper strength was anchoring him. "I haven't done anything wrong," Malik said, locking eyes with Harris. "And I have the right to call my mom." Harris scoffed. "You'll get your phone call at the station." "No," Malik replied. His hand moved slowly into his hoodie pocket, every motion deliberate, non-threatening, and he pulled out his phone. "I'm calling my mom. Right now." Officer Wells flinched. "Sergeant, maybe we should let him call. Just to be sure." "Wells, no." Harris cut him off, his voice like steel. But Malik had already dialed. "Mom, I need you to come to Crescent Lux right away." They called the cops. "They think I stole something." His voice was steady, but each word struck the air like a hammer. On the other end of the line, only the sound of a sharp inhale. Then silence. 5 minutes later, the boutique door flung open, followed by firm, purposeful footsteps. A black woman appeared, dressed in a sharp navy suit, her face carved from stone beneath the brim of a commanding officer's hat. The nameplate on her chest gleamed. Angela Turner, Chief of Police, Brookdale PD. The entire room froze. Sergeant Cole Harris instinctively took half a step back. Officer Wells stood motionless, barely able to breathe. Angela Turner's eyes scanned the room, starting with her son, still standing with his hands half raised and his collar slightly wrinkled. She turned to Harris, who was still holding the handcuffs, then to the store clerk, Susan Halbridge, whose face was flushed, eyes still burning with self-righteousness. "Sergeant Harris," Angela said, her voice calm but firm enough for everyone to hear. "Can you explain to me why my son is being restrained without a single question, a shred of evidence, or even a glance at the security footage?" Chief Angela Turner, ma'am, we received a report from the employee here," Harris stammered. Angela cut him off. "And your first response was to pull out handcuffs before verifying anything at all?" No one answered. Susan jumped in. He dropped the bracelet and looked suspicious. "I was just going with my instincts." "And your instincts," Angela said, her gaze sharp as a blade, "were enough to bring an armed officer into confrontation with a teenage boy?" Malik stood still, his eyes fixed on his mother, grateful, but holding back emotion. He wasn't relieved. He wasn't vindicated. All he'd wanted was to buy a bracelet for his little sister. And yet, here they were. Angela pulled out her police badge and held it level with Susan's face. "You falsely accused my son. And unless there's evidence to the contrary, you will be held accountable." The atmosphere in the store dropped to a chilling stillness. Everyone waited for what would come next. Angela walked straight to the counter. "I want to see the security footage. Right now." The store manager, a man named Leonard Briggs, nodded nervously. "Yes, Chief Turner. Right this way, please." She didn't glance back at Susan or Harris. She didn't need to. The surveillance room was barely large enough for 3 people, but the air was thick with the weight of impending judgment. Leonard pulled up the footage and rewound to the moment Malik had entered the store. They saw the 17-year-old black teenager approach the display counter, politely ask to see a silver bracelet, and pull out a worn but neatly folded wallet containing cash. There were no furtive gestures, no darting eyes, no suspicious behavior. When Malik picked up the bracelet, everything was entirely normal, until it slipped from his fingers and clattered to the floor. A small, simple accident. But what came next was the real indictment. Susan Halbridge screaming as if she had just caught a thief in the act, then dialing the phone and using the exact phrases Angela had seen hundreds of times in false police reports. Black male in a hoodie, acting suspicious, aggressive, dangerous. Angela said nothing throughout the video. But when the screen went black, She turned around, her eyes cold as steel. "Sergeant Harris," she said, "if I hadn't shown up today, my son would have been handcuffed and taken away like a criminal." Based on what? A dropped bracelet and a racist woman's word. Cole Harris lowered his head, unable to answer. Angela turned to Susan. "Mrs. Halbridge, I hope you realize the gravity of your false accusations. That young man came into your store to buy a birthday gift for his little sister. He saved every dollar from his job at the local bakery. And this is how you repay that kind of kindness." Susan stammered. I was just going with my instinct. I've seen things before." "You didn't see anything," Angela interrupted sharply. "You just saw skin color. And in my line of work, that has a name: profiling." Angela stepped out of the surveillance room and lifted her head, locking eyes with every person still in the store. Malik remained where he stood, silent, as if trying to decide whether justice actually existed. The atmosphere inside Crescent Lux Jewelers grew heavy after the security footage confirmed Malik's innocence. All eyes turned toward Susan Halbridge, who had moments earlier loudly accused the teenager. But instead of admitting her mistake or offering an apology, she simply lowered her head, quietly gathered her things, and left the store, leaving behind only shame and defeat. Malik stood there, his heart still pounding from what had just happened. He turned to his mother, Chief of Police Angela Turner, with eyes full of gratitude. The sound of the door shutting behind Susan Halbridge did little to clear the stifling tension still hanging in the jewelry store. She moved quickly, almost breaking into a jog, avoiding all eye contact as she made her exit. Angela Turner, Chief of Police of Brookdale, remained standing in the middle of the room. She glanced around, her eyes cutting like knives through the silence that had descended during the confrontation. Then she walked over to Malik, placing a steady, grounding hand on his shoulder. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Her posture remained strong, but her voice held an unmistakable hint of worry. "I'm okay," Malik nodded, though his eyes still shimmered with unresolved hurt. She gently squeezed his shoulder, offering a small, comforting smile to let him know it was over. But she herself was already preparing for the next step. Angela turned around, pulled out her phone, and began issuing orders in a voice that allowed no disagreement. "Call the communications office. Prepare a press release. Name: Susan Halbridge. Business: Crescent Lux Jewelers. Incident: racially biased treatment. Demand public apology and formal response." Employees in the store began murmuring nervously. Several looked alarmed as they realized Susan's name was about to make headlines. Sergeant Cole Harris, the one who nearly cuffed Malik without investigation, turned toward Angela as if to speak, but she simply shook her head. "You'll be included in the internal report for acting on bias before reviewing any evidence." Officer Ethan Wells, who had shown hesitation earlier, simply nodded, eyes downcast, silently acknowledging the truth. Angela turned to the store manager, her posture composed but her gaze like a tornado. "You let her walk out without a single question. You think silence will keep Crescent Lux clean? On the contrary, silence is complicity." The manager stood speechless, unable to respond. Angela picked up her phone again. "I want the department's communications office to issue a statement about the misuse of emergency services for personal bias and the presence of racial prejudice in decision-making. Her name must be included." A few customers in the store began timidly pulling out their phones to record. The incident at Crescent Lux had now gone beyond a simple misunderstanding. It had become a symbol of change. But just as mother and son were preparing to leave the store, a voice called out from behind. "Wait." Everyone turned to see a well-dressed middle-aged man step forward. He introduced himself as the owner of Crescent Lux Jewelers. "I want to apologize for what happened. I've been fully briefed on the incident," he said, his tone sincere. "This is not how we treat our customers. I will make sure Susan is held accountable for her actions." He turned to Malik and handed him a small box. "This is a gift from us. I hope your sister likes it." Malik opened the box and saw a sparkling bracelet inside, more beautiful than anything he had ever imagined. He looked up, eyes glistening with tears, unsure of what to say. "Thank you, sir," he whispered. Angela nodded, her eyes filled with quiet gratitude. Thank you for doing the right thing. As the mother and son walked out of the store, Malik felt a weight lift off his chest. He knew there was still much ahead, but today, he had learned that truth and courage would always find a way to rise. And Angela Turner, both as a mother and a leader, was doing everything in her power to make sure the truth wasn't just acknowledged, it would be etched into the very fabric of the system. 3 days after the incident at Crescent Lux Jewelers, the entire city of Brookdale seemed to awaken. Local and national media outlets simultaneously picked up the story, turning it into a centerpiece of public discourse on racial bias and social justice. Major newspapers like the Brookdale Times, the National Herald, and networks like BNN and WBC all ran special segments, offering in-depth analysis of Susan Halbridge's behavior and the police department's response. On social media, the hashtag Justice for Malik quickly began trending, drawing millions of shares and comments. People from across the country voiced outrage over the act of racial discrimination and expressed their support for Malik and his family. Many shared their own stories of unjust treatment, fueling a powerful movement demanding change. Under immense public pressure, Crescent Lux Jewelers was forced to hold a public press conference to apologize to Malik and the broader community. During the event, a store representative announced that Susan Halbridge had been terminated, and they pledged to conduct diversity and inclusion training for all staff. The store also committed to partnering with civil rights organizations to improve internal policies. On the law enforcement side, Sergeant Cole Harris was placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation for unprofessional and biased conduct. Police Chief Angela Turner, despite being Malik's mother, firmly stated that all misconduct would be dealt with appropriately, with no exceptions. She emphasized that justice must not remain a mere concept, it must be implemented through concrete action. Though still emotionally affected by the incident, Malik bravely appeared on a televised interview, sharing his experience and urging people not to stay silent in the face of injustice. His words, "We can't change the past, but we can shape the future," became a rallying cry for many young people in the community. Malik's story was no longer seen as an isolated case. It had become a symbol in the fight against racism and social injustice. It served as a reminder that even the smallest actions can lead to significant change, and that every person has a responsibility to stand up for justice and dignity for all. As the late afternoon sun cast an amber glow over Brookdale, mother and son stepped out of the police department. Malik quietly slid into the back seat of their familiar SUV. He leaned his head against the window, eyes following the trees shedding leaves along the roadside, though his mind remained stuck on the stairs, the baseless accusation, and the echo of handcuffs clicking close to his wrists that day. Angela sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the wheel. No words were spoken at first. She knew exactly what her son was going through. Not a simple fear, but the deep pain of having one's right to exist fairly stripped away. Not because of actions, but because of skin color. "Malik," Angela finally spoke after a long silence. Her voice softened, carrying the weariness and resilience of a mother long accustomed to serving a system that often betrayed its own. "Are you okay?" Malik took a deep breath. "I don't know. I should feel relieved. But instead, I just feel empty. Like, even after proving I was innocent, nothing really changed." Angela nodded slowly. "I understand. Not every battle ends in applause or perfect justice. Some battles we're forced to endure, not to win, but to survive. To show others that they can't erase our worth forever." Malik looked at his mother. "Do you think they'll see that? Or will they just forget, like so many times before?" Angela didn't answer right away. She pulled out her phone and opened a recent post that had been shared over 10,000 times. The headline read, "The boy at Crescent Lux, and the mother who refused to stay silent." Security footage showing Malik bending to pick up the bracelet, his hands nowhere near his pockets, had gone viral, standing as a vivid testament to the truth. "Some will see," she said, "and some will remember. What matters most is that you don't forget. You did the right thing. And now, go home to your sister," Angela added with a soft smile, placing a hand on her son's shoulder. A few hours later, laughter echoed from the living room. Amira, Malik's younger sister, was twirling around the couch, wearing the sparkling silver bracelet, her joy as pure and innocent as childhood itself. When she saw her brother, She ran to him and threw her arms around his waist. "I love this gift." Amira squealed. "The little butterfly is so pretty." Malik gave a faint smile. For the first time in days, a bit of the tension on his face seemed to ease. "I picked it because you're strong like a butterfly," he said. "Small, but nothing can stop you from flying." Amira crinkled her nose with a giggle, and Angela watched her son with eyes full of pride and quiet sorrow. In that moment, she knew he had grown, not just in height or age, but in spirit. Malik had crossed a painful threshold that every person of color eventually confronts. The realization that justice is something you fight for, not something that's simply given. Outside, twilight settled over Brookdale. But inside the Turner family's modest home, another kind of light had begun to rise. The light of dignity, of truth, and of children who know their worth, even when the world chooses not to see it.